Bon dia, good morning. As the university's Vice Rector for Research, I am pleased to open up this event, or actually any event having to do with the ERC, because the ERC has been nothing short of a blessing for this university. Its objectives align very well with ours. Its grants match very well the kind of people that we want to have here. People who are internationally recognized, capable of putting together strong teams and of doing frontier research of the highest quality. We have been very successful getting ERC grants during FP7, much more so than any other university in Spain. And of course, we want to continue down the same path now with Horizon 2020. The university's research service is here to support anybody who wants to apply for an ERC grant, and that includes assistance, preparing your proposal, putting together your budget, even having mock interviews before you go to Brussels for your actual interview. And of course, our support includes hosting events such as this one to disseminate information. And as far as events of this nature go, it is difficult to imagine a better program than the one we have in store for you today. So you're going to hear from one of the vice presidents of the ERC and from one of the few researchers in Europe who has already obtained 2 ERC grants back to back. And if you allow me to brag for a second, we're very proud that these 2 distinguished people also have high responsibilities within the management of our university. I think that says a lot about the type of institution that we want to be. So before we get started, let me turn the floor over for a minute to Cristina Borràs from Àgora, the Catalan Agency for Research Funding, who is co-organizing this event with us. Cristina?
Thank you. First of all, I would like to thank the University of Pompeu Fabra and the Ministry for organizing the event and congratulate them for the results. And as it's been said, I would like to highlight that the ERC program has become an international benchmark for excellence and leadership of researchers. Therefore, I would like to mention that in FP7, Catalonia has been granted with 135 grants, which means that we represent the 3% of all EU grants. This is an outstanding, successful result, and we consider that this is a representation of our excellence, and we can obviously look into our international competitiveness. 44% of these grants are starting grants and 34% are advanced grants, which also provides us some information about the career success of our researchers. And I would like to mention that also in the proof of concept grant, we have very highlighting results, and we have 8% of the ERC grants. This is even more important for us, as these grants will represent the capacity of turning these ideas into innovations which could bring us these commercial results or growth in the future. From this point, I would like to also highlight that from the government of Catalonia, Àgora and the ministry, we are also giving support to this specific program with some workshops on proposal preparation, interviews, role play of the interviews, and you can send us any inquiries you have for giving you support on this program. Thank you very much, and we expect that we will also go on with these results in the future.
Thank you, Cristina, for the support that your agency is giving. And let me now introduce our first speaker, Professor Núria Sebastián, who is, first of all, the holder of an ERC Advanced Grant herself, which means a top researcher. She's also the director of this university's PhD program, which means somebody committed to this institution. And she is also one of the 3 vice presidents of the ERC, which means that she's one of the most influential people in Europe as far as frontier research is concerned. She's by definition a busy person, and we're very grateful that she has taken the time to be with us today. So after this intimidating introduction, Nuria, the room is yours.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me to be here today. Actually, as a member of the Scientific Council and one of the vice presidents, for us, this is one of the most important activities that we can have, that is being in contact with applicants and potential applicants and also grantees, because the only reason of being the ERC is that because we want to fund people like you, so the people who can push the European research to the first line in the world landscape. So I'm going to have quite a general presentation. I guess that most of you will know many of the things that I'm going to say, but I hope that I will be able to tell you some things that you don't know. Well, the ERC was a real change in how the European Union was funding research, because the idea is frontier basic research or applied research. Many people say that it's just basic research, but it's not the case. What we want is to fund excellence. So this is one thing. The other one is that it's completely bottom-up. It's you who decide on the topics that are being funded and no one else. So there is no political, no kind of restriction on any of the topics. And it's organized along two different lines. One is the Scientific Council, that the 22 members, including the vice president, and we don't represent our countries, but we represent our disciplines, and sometimes not even the disciplines. The idea is just representing the research in Europe. We are supported by the agency. They are the ones to whom you submit your applications, to whom you submit your reports, and excellence is the only criterion. And to us, something that's really important is that, with the exception of the synergy, it has been the individuals who we want to push. As you can see, there has been a substantial increase in the budget, but this is kind of a mirror and not a reality, as you will see, because actually now for 3 years we're getting less money than the amount of money that we had at the end of the FP7, and I will show you the figures a bit later. This is something that usually it's not included in the presentations, and I decided that it would be good so that you know a bit what the Scientific Council is worried and concerned about, and what do we do. We are internally organized in 2 standing committees and in several working groups. The standing committees are mandatory, there are 2, and one deals with conflict of interest and malpractice. So we have written our own regulations. Of course, there are some general law that we have to follow, but as for what is a fraud, for instance, what is plagiarism, is us who decide more or less where are the boundaries. And I would say that maybe 2-3 times a week we are consulted by, usually are the panel members that, well, we are not that many. If you think of your specific small, narrow domain, there are not that many people who are the best researchers in the world, so it's quite often the case that the same reviewer has reviewed an application for the ERC and, for instance, the NIH. And then they say, well, this application has been sent twice, or I have seen an application that is really similar to this one. So this is something that it's being reviewed in the conflict of interest and the COIME, one of the standing committees. The other one deals with the panels. So it's the creation of panels, and we care a lot about having representatives, well, not representatives, excuse me, scientists from as many countries as we want, and trying to avoid having too many from the same country. So geographical diversity is also good because we also want to send a message that excellence is spread all over Europe, though more concentrated in some places than in others. And then the working groups are completely ad hoc structures that have been created to deal with specific project problems. And here I'm going to just mention that the 6 working groups. One is on gender balance. We're very much concerned by the low number of applications, and also the lower, there is, we found on percentages, a less number of, an inferior percentage of female applicants than the one that they submit, and we are very concerned. We can do nothing to improve the percentage of applicants, but we should be able to make the evaluation fair. Another one is on widening participation. As you know, or may suspect, there are some countries who get many more grants than others, and what we want is to encourage applicants from different countries, and in particular, one of them is Spain. The other one is internationalization. That was kind of, this is not so active group now, and it was just making the world know that the ERC existed and trying to bring to Europe the best researchers all over the world. Then we have the key performance indicators that we're supposed to be funding something that is different. And in general, I would not say that most of the European Commission is particularly happy with the idea of the ERC because they have no control. And no control means that all the recommendations that issue from the panels are the ones that are being funded. There is no interference. We change nothing. And this is really unique to the ERC. So there are no quotas. There are nothing. It's just scientific excellence. So, and also we have to prove that this is an effort, that this is an effort that is worth, and that we are funding something that is different. And this is new, so we have a working group trying to prove that we are funding really excellence and that this is not like anything else in the rest of the Horizon 2020 and formerly the FP7. The other one is the innovations and relation with the industry. We have set up this stream that is the proof of concept. That was also kind of a defense line against the idea that researchers, they live in this ivory tower, that we don't care about giving back to the society, and just wanted to prove that this is not the case. And I must say, I won't talk about this, but I must say that this is an extremely successful, not only defensive line, but also successful in terms of having the interests of very good industries in the outcome that researchers produce. And the last one is in the open access. Now, a major change between FP7 and Horizon 2020 is that there is a mandate by the Parliament on open access, both publication and data. And frankly, the data, I think that they have never thought twice about what it meant. So we are also trying to set up, as we are the only scientists in the whole system, we're trying to set up some guidelines that make sense for scientists. So this is some of the things that we spend our time on. So I guess that you all know that there are 3 basic schemas that are the starting grants, the consolidated grants, and advanced grants. They are supposed to cover different stages in the scientific career. You get more and more money, and you are older and older as you proceed from one step to the other one. All of them have some top that you can ask a bit more money if you're changing institutions and you request a bit more equipment, for instance. And finally, the proof of concept, that is something that is closed to our grantees. So the ERC, something that is different is that it's completely freedom and independence. So you choose, as I said, you choose your team. No one has to impose you any kind of restrictions. You have up to 5 years. It's up to you to decide if you want to be 3, 4, 5 years, although the vast majority of the applicants ask for 5 years. And something that you can use having an ERC is to negotiate better conditions at work. You can ask for more lab space. You can ask for a better salary, maybe. And the idea is also that the institutions, they should compete to get the best researchers. And on this, it was pivotal having the portability of grants. Usually the grants belong to the host institution. So if you want to move, then you have to argue with your host institution, and you have to make an arrangement, not for an ERC grant. You can take it at any time, anywhere you want, inside Europe, of course. And usually it goes, in some countries at least, that your own country give you more money once you have an ERC grant, because you have already proven that you can produce excellent ideas. So the evaluation is basically on 2 levels, nothing new under the sun for scientists here. That is the excellence of the research project. This is first the most important thing. It has to be groundbreaking. It has to be something new. It has to have a potential impact, and we evaluate and value the scientific approach. And, well, for this, I'm not going to talk for the synergy grant, because given that we have less money than we have before, now it has been suspended. And the action of the principal investigator is on the usual lines, that you have been able to produce excellent results, and also the commitment to the research project. And we have different panels that evaluate and score on each criteria, and then they rank the proposals. So the Scientific Council is the one who decides who is in the panels, no one else. So it's us who have to blame if you think that someone who shouldn't be there is there. We have 25 panels that are structured into 3 different domains. 10 on the physical sciences and engineering, 9 on life sciences, and 6 on social sciences and humanities. And what makes this exceptional, to us it's not exceptional, to scientists it's the way things should be. So you are evaluated in international panels and they decide what should be. But this is exceptional within the rest of the Horizon 2020 in how research is evaluated. So there are other criteria here. As you can see, it's only research and the ideas. So at the end of the 7th program, there were over 5,300 researchers. 1/3 is at the advanced grant and 2/3 is at the starting grant. We wanted to emphasize and we wanted to push the young. And there are 64 different nationalities. It's extremely competitive. The success rate is around 10%. The grants are located in 600 different institutions in 30 different countries. However, 50% of the grants, they go to 50 institutions. Something that has come up as an outcome is that now there is benchmarking. There is no longer this idea that I am extremely good because I'm saying this, and at a national level I'm really good, so that means that I'm good at a world or at least on a European level. Well, now we have European standards for research, and this is changing also many things in many countries. I think, also being a grantee, that it's quite efficient, and the grant management is also quite quick. We decided that there will be only 2 scientific reports, one after 2.5 years and the other one at the end. One is at half the project and the other one is at the end, because we don't want our grantees to spend hours and hours and hours writing memorandums. It's highly recognized, and up to now there have been 30,000 publications, and most of them have been 12% in the top 1% most cited. Here you can see the distribution according to age. If you are in your 30s, this is when your chances to get an ERC grant are the highest. And then it's not only the fact that the ERC money goes to the PI, but they also go to the teams. And this is something that we want to stress, because that means quite often that the quality of the postdocs and PhD students improve in those institutions and centers that receive ERC grants. This is what I was telling you before in terms of the budget. We represent 17% of all the money that is in the Horizon 2020. And as you can see here, we have gone down, and we won't be able to go up until 2017. This is something important because quite often it's criticized, well, the British and the Israeli are the ones who get more grants than the rest. Well, but as you can see, a correlation of 0.97 is quite impressive. I think that you cannot find many things on Earth that correlate 0.97, at least to things that are a priori completely different. And one is the publications within the 10% most cited. So this is in each country, how many publications are in the 10 most cited. That means the quality of the research being performed in a specific country, and then the number of grants that they get. If you, in this case, what it means is that actually, well, the UK is performing better than expected because they get more grants than what it should be according to the percentage of the top 10% publications. Germany is performing worse, and interestingly, Spain is performing below what it should be expected. So I think that that proves that there is room for us to get more grants than the ones that we have now. This is the success rate. This orange line here is the average, but the vast majority of the countries are under the success rate. There are only the usual suspects, France, Germany, UK, that are above, and that makes the average like this because these countries, they have many more grants and applications than the rest. And as you can see, Switzerland and Israel are the ones that really pop out. But
you don't have Catalonia, I see.
We don't have data for regions. We can only provide data for countries. We can provide data for institutions, but nothing else. Now I'm speaking here as the Vice President of the ERC, so the European Commission and the ERC cannot provide this data. But you can deduce them if you know the institutions quite rapidly. So this is something that the ERC is also being accused that, well, given that the applications are in English and the interviews are in English, you're not a non-English speaker, then your chances are lower. Well, I think that what makes it successful is having a good policy at the level of your country. Here what you see is non-nationals in the host institution, nationals in the host institution, and the UK makes it particular success because they're extremely good at attracting researchers from other countries. And this is something, at least when I saw it, came to me as a surprise, that the Germans are pretty good at letting their good researchers go into other countries. Quite surprising. The Swiss, as you can see, they also made a success because they can attract researchers from other countries. And Spain, I would say it's quite balanced. We don't lose many good researchers, and we're kind of quite good attracting others. And here you have also the distribution according to countries. Here you have the top host institutions in Spain, of course. The El Consejo is the largest one, so they are the ones who get the largest number. And something also that one should expect is something that the Consejo is clearly showing, that two-thirds of the grants go to the young ones and one-third more or less to the advanced grant. And in this respect, I must say that the Pompeu Fabra is quite atypical because it gets more advanced than starting. So the responsibles in the university may want to think a bit about it. So this is also a summary of the data from Spain. There have been 4,540 applications in FP7. We don't have the final data from 2014 yet. Basically, everything is within the percentages, I would say, except for one thing, that is the gender. Women are applying, the percentage of women applying, the percentage of successful women in Spain is far below what it should be.
The success rate is low, no?
But also the applications, that you don't have it here, but the applications is also lower. So I encourage women to apply. And well, here you have more or less the data.
I was meaning the total success rate is like 5%?
Yeah, but that depends also on the entrance. So what you don't have here is the percentage of women, Spanish women.
Total, not just for women.
Yeah.
3,500 proposals and only 237 wins. That's like 7 or 8%, right?
Yeah.
So it's low success rate.
But imagine that we have the percentage, the success you have to compare it also with the percentage that enters. If we have 8%, if only 8% of the applications in Spain came from women, that it's not, these are not the numbers. And you have 8% of success, then you get a percentage that should be. Okay, so this is the scaring slide. So what are the typical profile of an ERC grantee? A Nobel laureate? No, this is much more for propaganda and saying that we are able to fund the best researchers in Europe, and this is the propaganda because we want to show the Commission that is the one who has to renew the amount of money that we get, that we're not missing the good researchers. And this year has been by far the best because we got 3 ERC grantees getting a Nobel Prize and actually also a Fields Medal. So, but these are much more normal ERC grantees. So these are 3 examples from Spain, from different fields, one from el CSIC in Madrid, another one from the University of Murcia, and another one from CIMNE here in Barcelona. And these are 3 examples from the University Pompeu Fabra. So I would not say that anyone can get an ERC, but you don't need to have a Nobel Prize or at least being a Nobel candidate to get an ERC grant. Okay, as we are really concerned of why females, but also the less performing countries, they're also less performing in the sense that it's not that they don't apply and then the success rate is lower. And we are really trying to understand why and trying to provide guidance to potential applicants. So this is, we have just performed a survey that all grantees and unsuccessful grantees, but I think the one that went to step 2, that I'm not completely sure, they have received a monkey survey, and we were asking some questions. The survey is still going on, and I am just showing you some of the responses that some grantees or applicants provide. In general, looking at the responses, I think that we all know why Spain is performing poorly. But I think that the first one is the best advice. And I think that this is why women and people coming from less performing, I would say host institutions, perform worse, is because you have to think big. I like the way the ERC, the program was called before, because it was ideas, and this is what matters. You have an idea, go for it, and go for it and think big. This has nothing to do with a typical Plan Nacional. You can ask for 2.5 million if you are an advanced grantee, 1.5 million. So you really need to dream about it, and then believe in your competitiveness. Think that you can make it. If you are not convinced, you won't make it, particularly if you go to the interview. This is where your chances just disappear. And if in front of a question you say, well, yeah, maybe not, you know. So say it, I know the answer, I know how to solve this problem. And the poor English is a handicap because, well, particularly at the interviews, you have to respond to questions, though the panels are advised, and most of the panel members, English is not their first language, so we don't care about grammatical errors, but you need to be a bit fluent. Also, the other is coaching from support from close colleagues. This is really important. I think that this is also a crucial difference between successful groups and unsuccessful ones, is that you are able to help people to write these mock interviews. And the final one is seek solid administrative support. And that was what I had to tell you. Thank you.
Any questions for Nuria? Take advantage of her? Yes, sir.
You mean the program? Okay, you have the financial, this is every 18 months, the host institution has to provide the finance, but after the 2.5, you have a scientific evaluation. But it's quite, so as a scientist, you know that if you have a question, what you wrote when you write the application, the methods, and sometimes even the small details of the question, they change. You add things and you don't do things. So this is not an FP7 traditional one. There are no milestones. There are no deliverables in the sense. Just think about science. We gave you the money to push that idea. So push it the best way you think. So even if you think, okay, I decided that I wanted to have 3 postdocs and 2 technicians, but now you realize that actually the technical work is much more higher, and then you decide, okay, I'm going to go for 2 postdocs because furthermore I got some extra funding and that work, and then I will hire 2 more technicians. Fine. It's up to you. We trust you. This is the idea. And it works. It works because we have worked so hard to get this grant. Now that you get it, you want to do it. It's your life. So we trust you. And what you cannot do is that I gave you a grant to do A, then you do something that is completely different, of course. But to follow the idea, you're free. Did I answer your question?
There is no minimal achievement expected.
Well, this is very difficult because what is the minimal achievement, for instance, in mathematics? Publications take a long time. Maybe the number of citations are very low. There is no reliable impact factor, therefore. And if we compare with some fields, molecular biology, it goes very quickly, the number of applications. The good thing is that you're going to be evaluated by your peers. And because there are molecular biologists and mathematicians that we hope that we are choosing the most respectful ones, they are the ones that know. So it's nonsense just saying that you need to publish, 20 pages? So now I answered your question? Okay, so these are individual grants, okay? We would give the money to you. Then what happens is the following. If, it depends on the feasibility of the project then, okay? Imagine that you are trying to do something that it uses a technique that you have never used, so then it would be good in order to convince the panel members that at least you have contacts with the relevant people who know that technique, or that you have even better if you have the commitment, even better, not necessarily, okay? So you say, okay, I have this postdoc who said that if I get the ERC, would come to work to my lab, and this is the person who knows the technique, so then it's fine. Then I say, okay, this is something, a new venue. You want to explore something that is completely new. Or if you plan to do, to collect some information, in Antarctica, well, better if you prove that you know all the problems of doing this kind of research in Antarctica, or that maybe you don't have it, but you have previous collaboration. So everything is about the feasibility. You have to convince the panel. And the panels are, it may be you. So are scientists. So when they read it, say, how is this person going to do this? Because this is a technique that is extremely difficult and won't be learned in just 3 months, and it doesn't make sense. And then you say, well, no, but look, they have already contact with these people, and actually it makes sense. So the group depends on the grant, and it depends on science. Yeah. Mentioning potential? I can't hear you.
Josep, microphone. Wait, we have a mic coming your way.
Thank you. So it seems that from your words that mentioning names of potential people you want to hire if you get the grant is acceptable or even worth to do it in a proposal?
It
Specific
depends.
names,
It's not, but it's not. So the problem, if I say this, now everybody will say, okay, if I put names, I'm going to increase the chances. Not necessarily.
Not necessarily, but
it's okay.
It can be done.
There is no rule written. Okay, it's like, imagine that you are reviewing your own project. Imagine that you're reviewing your own project, and feasibility, of course, is one of the dimensions that will be evaluated. And then you say, would I believe that I will be able to do this? Do I really believe that that I will be able to convince someone that without anyone? You can also say that if it's a technique that you don't know, but there is enough people around, then you say, okay, I will hire someone with this profile. Fine. Because it's not so uncommon. And you don't know the technique, but it's not so uncommon. So I'm a bit concerned about saying that if you have a name, you increase your chances, because it will be very specific of the type of this is why I use the Antarctica, that is really exceptional. Yeah.
What's the rate if you include in your budget big infrastructures?
Making?
Big equipment for analytical.
I wanted to know how is evaluated regarded if in your budget you include big equipment,
Then you can
big
have
infrastructures.
then there is the top off. So there is, when I say, for instance, a starting grant is 1.5 million euros, up to 1.5 million euros. And then if you move labs or your research requires buying an extremely expensive equipment, then you can ask for 500,000, an extra 500,000, okay? So it's either because you move and then you have to set up a full new lab, or because your research requires something. So.
The gentleman with the microphone? Yes.
Okay, just by talking with some other colleagues, it seems to me that in Horizon 2020 there are also the co-PIs.
No.
So, no, it's not true.
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay, so it's
Not at all.
Okay.
Over here. Ladies first.
Not lady first, she was first.
About gender balance. You also said that there are no quotas or no within the selection process. So I'm wondering if maybe there are any internal directives or nothing in order to move towards gender balance.
No. We care a lot about, I was unsuccessful twice. I got it at the third time I tried. And I was really annoyed by the fact that every year the description of the principal investigator changed. And I was thinking, oh damn, those people at the ERC, they just change everything every year just so that we cannot use the one of the previous year. And then once I was there, I knew why. And it's an effort trying to help women to be successful. Men are much better than women at showing their feathers. I'm so good, I'm excellent. I was the one who did this. While women tend to say, with the help of my team, I managed to, and for that there's plenty of literature. So the first year I applied, there was describe yourself, how successful you are. that, I mean, we're making life of women a bit more difficult. So we're just trying to make the evaluation fair. Just focus. Then the other thing that I was not happy is that I had to restrict to just either the 10, my best 10 publications, say why I cannot put all, and I was just trying to squeeze all of them anywhere that I could. Wrong. That was done because there are the data that show that on average, people who you see that are equivalent, men have more publications than women, but in less relevant positions because they team better than women. So, but if now I ask you, select your 10 best publications, there we get what are your real contributions, and we try to be fair. So this is something that we constantly check and try to improve it. But if a panel decides that if they can fund the 10 grants and the 10 go to men and the 10 go to the UK, bad luck, really bad luck. But they are the best. It's like saying that the champions is always won, I don't know, by the I don't know, because now I'm saying I know very much about football, but I know the Spaniards and the Germans and the UK, I guess. Bad luck. Yeah.
Well, probably you can hear me. I would like to come back to the...
Micro.
Okay, then,
yeah, but then they can't hear you at the end.
Let's have that question first, and then we'll bring the microphone over.
Sorry.
So, come back to the equipment.
Let's wait. Ask your question first, and then we'll send the microphone over here.
Yeah.
So is there then a quota on the selection committee?
On the selection?
Committee?
The panels.
On the panel?
We have a recommendation by the European Commission that it should be 40%. But we say that we just want to have the best researchers. So in some panels, we have more than 50%. And in other panels, we have less than 20%. Mathematics, for instance, is very difficult to get 40% of in 6 panels at the same time, because we have, you know, that panels alternate every 2 years. So we have to fill in 6 panels. And that means finding 6 times 15 top mathematicians. Good luck if you find 40% women there. But, so there is no quota, but we are concerned about this, and we try to find, but the excellence is always there, the best. And it's a nightmare, I can tell you, because I spend a lot of time trying to find excellent researchers, women, and for the less performing countries, I would say. Yes, about equipment?
Well, I have a mic now. So coming back to the equipment, well, you probably heard about depreciation rules. So, and they are national, well, at least in the European projects I have been involved too. And what does it mean? You have a project for 5 years, the depreciation time is 10 years for big equipment. So normally you get reimbursed 50%. Even if you buy the equipment on the first day. And then if you buy it later on the project, so it's not a question to you, I'm afraid.
No, but it's a question that you can direct to our service, and we'll help you with that. It's a
No,
technical...
just the question is, do these rules apply to ERC grants or not?
They do. I know as a grantee, because they said buy everything the first year.
No, but even this will give you 50% only. And
No,
if we are talking about big equipment, this is a big problem. And I have been hoping that maybe in this excellent ERC scheme, they would maybe make it more reasonable, because it's a big obstacle, really, believe me.
Accountancy is something that we cannot escape. So we try to make it lighter and lighter, but there are things that we cannot escape, unfortunately.
No, and these rules are national. This is also the problem. The national rules are applied in this case. In each country, the depreciation periods are different, maybe 10 in Spain and 5 in Portugal, as I know, for example, for some kinds of equipment. Okay, thank you.
Okay then, Bart?
I'm not sure if I was ahead of you or not.
Okay, Veronica, go ahead.
Nuria, thank you for the very informative and very encouraging presentation. In thinking about thinking big when preparing the application, there is this obvious relationship between big ideas, big projects, and money. So I imagine it's easier to spend $1.5 million or $2 million in the life sciences and perhaps in engineering or new equipment, setting up laboratories. But in the social sciences, it's a little, for me, I've never asked for that much money. I've asked for a lot of money and I had to think big, but now I'll have to think even bigger. Could you give us some sense of how we can think so big? Because there are big ideas. There are big ideas that I'm starting to have, but they're not necessarily expensive, you know? So how can I make them expensive?
No.
We can help you with that, don't worry, Veronica.
No. You don't have to. What I said is up to. There are projects, 5-year projects that are happy, I don't know, I'm always coming back to mathematics, because just to avoid the social sciences, because they seem to be the odd ones, and it's not the case. So in social science, in mathematics, there are projects, advanced grants for 700,000. And then if you split it into 5 years, it will give you 2 postdocs and a bit more. So, kind of. In Spain, if you're in the Netherlands, it will be 2 pre-docs. They're so expensive. The Netherlands is so expensive. But it's more or less 2 postdocs plus traveling, and a bit for the postdocs is 100,000 euros, and a bit more.
But isn't there a danger that the cheap project can be deemed not ambitious?
No.
I think that's what
No. But
right?
I think that I like very much Veronica's question, because don't think about the money. The money comes at the end as a need. So you have your idea, okay? And go for the big idea. Go for 5 years, up to 5 years. The first year it seemed that there were some projects at 3 years, then it went to 4, but then everybody realized that it's much better. I mean, 5 years is quite long. So you have your idea, you have your needs, and then you just adjust, and then you just ask for what you need. And beware about getting advice from your own institution, say, ask for more money, because then you may end up adding things that don't fit in the project. So you are the boss.
We should wrap up soon because we have 2 more speakers. I saw 2 more hands over here. Yes, Bart?
In the current evaluation in the 3 committees and the application where they ask last author papers, in a way, you partially punish very or highly interdisciplinary research. For example, I do a lot of clinical research, which means that the clinician will always be the last author because they are the strong ones. So that means that in your CV, it's very difficult to show it with your publications, even if you made the most important contribution. And also in the evaluation, you go either to a medical part or to the engineering part. I'm from biomedical engineering. And then you see that they don't, in a way, appreciate things. So how can you try to deal with it, to cope with it as an applicant, or are there ways within the ERC to do something about this?
No, it's our fault. Okay, you shouldn't try to anything. You just go for your project, and we know that interdisciplinary projects, I think, I'm just saying it by heart, something like 10% less successful than single. It's not interdisciplinary, but when you cross panels, yes, okay?
That's what
even
I mean.
if it's, because some panels are very interdisciplinary. If you are inside a panel, you have 10% more chances of getting your project funded than if you are. We have tried everything. Okay, everything. Interdisciplinary panels, whatever they mean. Keeping money at the end, trying to see, last idea, this is last week's, is dynamic panels. So we may try to identify topics or areas where there are several interdisciplinary projects, and then have dynamic panels. The problem with this is that we can only host the ERC premises 9 panels at the same time. There's no more room, and there are 25. So we have to have 3 different weeks. A dynamic panel would be good if the 2 panels are at the same time, And then you have people moving from one panel to the other. So you have the expertise of the panel would be defined by the members. We are working on that, you cannot imagine. I mean, it's...
But maybe also the experts themselves, because often when you have like an expert in the field is in a rather narrow field, there are probably much less really like interdisciplinary panel members. We try to get generalist panel members because at the first stage, I guess that this is going to be explained later, but at the first stage only, your project is going to be seen only, so this is important, because the second time I applied, I made this mistake. The first step has to be, it's very difficult, B1, it has to be both pushy enough and sexy enough so that people who are not experts will think, I want to see the full application, that is on step 2, but also advanced enough so that if there is someone who has some expertise, realizes that this is groundbreaking. So in the first, you're going to be seen by a panel that includes everybody, and you will have between 4 and 6 members of the panel. That means 1/3 or a half, depending on the size of the panel members reading your project. This is huge. So, and it makes the evaluation in a step 1 very general. Then in a step 2, it will be only those panel members that are specialists who know more about your topic, and then it goes for external review. So we try to have people who can accept reading applications that fall outside their narrow scope. Of course, everyone is a specialist in what you're a specialist, but you need to have a bit of a broad view to be included in a panel. Yeah.
Okay, we have to stop here because it's getting late. We'll have a chance to ask more questions to our next 2 speakers. So Nuria, it is a privilege to have you with us. Thank you for sharing all this wisdom. Thank you very much. Canvi de speakers.
Good morning. Let's move quick to the next section. We have with us now Esther Rodriguez. She will introduce in a very brief way the particularities, characteristics, and practical issues about the call, ERC call 2015. Esther has a PhD in physics from Paris 7 Denis, Diderot University. She has a large experience in research. And in July 29, she joined the European Office of Mineco-FECIT. And from September 2011, she is the national contact point of the ERC program. That's why she is here, and that's why she will explain how to improve our proposals and how to be more competitive and successful in our applications.
Thank you. Thank you, Eva. Thank you, all of you, for your interest in this call for proposal of the European Research Council. I think that Nuria has already explained extremely well which is the philosophy of the ERC and the principles behind the evaluation of ERC proposals. So I will concentrate on the practical aspects of the work program that is now active, and of the call for proposals that are open or that will be open in the near future. I will briefly overview how is the evaluation process, but I think you will have more information from the grantee, from Jan Ekut. And also I would like to spend the last minutes of my presentation to explain to you what are we trying to do at a national level so to better help you in your submission procedure and what are we trying to do to improve the success rate of Spanish proposals. So I will go everything. Nuria has already explained all these basic features of the European Research Council. I just wanted to highlight and to show you how the submission have been growing in the past within Framework Program 7. And as you can see, in red colors are the applications from young researchers. Let's call young researchers to those in the starting and consolidator stream. And as you can see, there have been much more applications, or the application has grown at a pace much bigger than the funding available. And this has forced the Scientific Council to take extremely hard measures on resubmission that we will explain later on. The thing is less dramatic for advanced grant, but still there has been also a growth in the submission number. As I said, this has forced the Scientific Council to put restrictions on the resubmission of proposals, and for the first time in 2014, we have already seen a drop in submissions, probably due to these restrictions. So I think the Scientific Council may be happy because they say this has been taken, the message has been taken by the applicants. So as Nuria already pointed out, the ERC is almost 17% of the funding available in the whole Horizon 2020. And in particular, the ERC is within the excellent pillar, together with the future and emerging technologies and the Marie Curie actions and infrastructure, and it represents half of this pillar. So it's really a big source of money for those applying to European programs. I would also like to highlight here that this program of future and emerging technologies is quite new, and it has now the vocation to open to other disciplines. And in this sense, I recommend you to get informed by your European offices, because maybe you can find another source of funding for your projects within this Future and Emerging Technologies program. So this is the budget allocation per year from 2014 till 2020. We are now in 2015, and as Nuria said, we have more or less the same money as we had in 2014 and as we had in 2013. So for the work program 2005, the philosophy is mainly the same because it works and because everybody is quite happy with the results the ERC has got in the same framework program 7. But there are some changes that have been introduced either in 2014 that now they are kept in this work program, and things that are also new in this work program 2015. Which are these new features? Okay, so the call for proposal are the three, the individual grant, the starting grant, the consolidator grant, and the advanced grant. And there's this other scheme for exploring the commercial capacity of your research results if you have already an ERC grant, this proof of concept grant. New to the whole Horizon 2020 is that your overhead now for the project, for the budget, will be to 25% instead of 20% as it was in ERC in the past. And then for the first time, as I said before, there's a restriction on the resubmission. Well, the restriction already existed, but now it's much harder. There's an extension on restrictions based on the outcome of the evaluation. I will devote a slide on this, so I don't stop here to explain this. Open access is now mandatory for every project within Horizon 2020, and this has an impact on your budget directly. So I highly recommend to get in contact with your European Project Office so you can get this into the budget properly, and so your open access, the open access policy doesn't affect too much your budget. And then there are now some templates for the CVs that are recommended but not mandatory, and we can discuss on this if you want. For what is the new call for proposals that are already in place, the main change is that the eligibility criteria is now the 1st of January of the year, and this will be like that in the future, or at least what the Scientific Council have told us. So you can plan beforehand to which call for proposals you want to go, because as you may know, before it was the eligibility date was the date in which the call for proposal was publicated. So it changes from year to year, and this has been changed, so it remains the same every year. Another thing that is new is that before the Scientific Council decided beforehand which percentage of the total budget went to the big areas, so the physical and engineer panels, the social science and humanities panels, and the life sciences panel. So 44 it was for physical and engineer, 37 I think it was for life sciences, and the rest 17% it was for social science and humanities. The thing was that there was higher pressure in the social science and humanities panels, and for that reasons the success rate were slightly lower, and this was constant within the year. So the Scientific Council decided not to put any pre-allocation budget, so the budget is allocated on a bottom-up approach completely. There's a slight update on the name of the panel titles, subtitles, and descriptors, and this has an impact, of course, in your proposal, because you have to choose to which panel you want to send your proposal, and you may check carefully which are the descriptors this year, so to send your proposal to the right panel, and this is crucial for your evaluation, as you may imagine. And in particular, there has been changes in the social science and humanities panels, and now anthropology is within SH5. So the panel on arts and on literature and culture, yes. As a novelty this year, you can get into an opt-in pilot for open data. So not only open data for publication, which is mandatory, but you can also share your research data if you wish. So this is optional. And in the evaluation form that is sent it to the panel members and to the external referees, before there was a question on the impact this ERC grant would have in your career, and this is not longer the case. This question is no longer in these forms. Maybe Nuria could explain us why. I don't know if it's because the answer was clear for everybody and always the same, but this question is no longer in the evaluation questionnaire. So what about these resubmission restrictions? As I said before, the outcome of your evaluation have an impact on the decision if you may apply or not to the two subsequent calls. If the proposals are rated on a letter categories, so you can get an A, a B, or a C at the end of the evaluation process. If you rate it as a C, your proposal is considered to be not of high quality or not at the quality standards of the ERC, and you may not submit a proposal neither to Work Program 2015 or 16, and this continues to be the case in this call for proposals. So if you are now applying to 2015 call for proposals and you get a C, you may not go for ERC grants, no category, so it doesn't matter if you're starting and you go for consolidated or advanced. If you get a C, you cannot go to 2016 and 2017 call for proposal. You have to wait until 2018. If you're rated with a B, so your proposal is considered to be of high quality, but not at the excellence standards of the ERC, then you have to wait for a year. So if you're applying now in 2015, you have to wait until 2017. And this is also the case for those of you that reach the step 2 of the evaluation. But at the end of the evaluation process, so after the interview, for example, the panel decides that your proposal has to be rated as a B because there's something lacking in your presentation or a major problem they encounter during the interview. If you get a B, you have to also wait for a year. And then only for those of you who get an A, and then your proposal is considered to be excellent, but the funding didn't reach you, so the funding, there's no left funding for your proposal because you're low in the rank, then you can go for the next call for proposal. And it's for those people in the category of a starting grant and consolidated grant that the ministry has a call for proposal to push you and to give you an amount of money that is up to 100 kilo euros for a year, so to advance in your research so you can go for the next call for proposals with better opportunities. And this call for proposal, you may already know it, is called Europa Excelencia. I won't stop too much in this open access common obligation, but you have everything you may need to know in the model grant agreement. And again, here my recommendation would be to rely on the expertise of the European project officer at your institution that may help you with everything you may need. About the profile, just to detail a little bit more on what it is expected in each stream of a starting, consolidator, and advanced. So for the starting grant, the ERC wants to nurture the next generation of research leaders in Europe, and that's what the panel member will look for. So they will give you the money in the critical stage in which you are setting your own group. As you know, there's an eligibility window that goes from the 2-year postdoctoral experience till 7 years. This window is strict, and you have to certify you are eligible with your PhD certificate. And there are some reasons that may allow you to extend this eligibility window, and these reasons are basically maternity. You have an extension of 18 months per each child you have had before or after your PhD, it doesn't matter. Long-term illness, over 90 days sick leave, but you have to prove it with official documents, or civil servant service, military service, or similar service. You have to provide, together with your proposal, this is very important, the host institution support letter that must be duly signed and dated. And what they're looking for is for someone who have already given proof of independence, maturity, and creative thinking. So you have to show a good track record. And what they ask as a minimum requirement is at least one major publication without the presence of your PhD supervisor. This is also an obligation. You must be committed at least 50% of your time, of your working time, to the project. But in the starting grant, this is really a minimum, and most of the starting grants are committed like 80% or 90%. Well, it depends on the profile, but 50% is really a minimum. For the consolidator grant, as the name explains, the ERC wants to support excellent PI when they are consolidating their research team. So then the level of maturity and the level of independence must be higher than for those in the starting grant scheme. The eligibility window is again strict, and it goes from the 7 postdoctoral year experience till 12 years of postdoctoral experience that can be extended for the same reasons than starting grant. And here the commitment is now, the minimum commitment is 40% instead of 50%, and this is new. One thing that is important is that for every individual grant in the ERC, at least half of your time you have to be within Europe. So you may have a double affiliation with an American university, for example, but then you have to show that your ERC project is running in Europe, and that still at least half of your time you will be here taking care of your ERC grant. For the advanced grant, well, this call for proposal is made to attract and reward top scientists from anywhere in the world to conduct frontier research in Europe. There's no restriction on the PhD date, so anyone can go. There's no requirement on PhD, but you are asked to demonstrate a strong profile in the last 10 years. So you have to be an active researcher. And this 10 years window has been put there so to compare in a fair basis people from different ages. So people with a 30-year track record is evaluated on a fair basis with people with a shorter track record, but they have to be excellent anyway. What they ask you to select for your profile and for your CV is 10 selected publications, or 3 monographs, or patent, expedition, prizes, conference. These are the different items you may highlight in your CV. And here the commitment with the ERC must be at least of 30% of your time, and as I said before, with at least 50% of your time in Europe. Here you have the calendar for this year call for proposal. The starting grant call for proposal is already open, and it will close in February. Then it will come the consolidator grant scheme, and then the advanced grant scheme. For the proof of concept scheme, it's like an always open call for proposal, because you have 3 different dates for submission, but there's no restriction on resubmission, so you can go as many times as you wish. If you already have this ERC grant and you have results that you want to explore, its commercial viability. And here you have also the different budget allocation for each scheme and the expected number of grants for each call for proposal. For the host institution, the role of the host institution is to ensure that the PI will run its project in the best condition possible, and must be located in a EU member state or associated country, and signs the grant agreement, so gets the 25% of the overhead. Well, as Nuria said, the grant management is quite light, and many grantees can confirm that. And grants are portable, and this is important and has its effect. So how is it called, the evaluation of ERC proposals? This is what you have to send to the application system. So you have some online forms that you have to fill in, together with the ethical issues that are compulsory. And then you have to send, well, you have to send your PhD certificate, your host institution commitment letter, but then you have to send at the same time this B1 part, that this is the extended synopsis and your CV and track record, and then the B2. The B1 is like 5 pages plus 2, so 9 pages in total. And then the scientific proposal, the full scientific proposal, that is 15 pages. So not that much, but it has to be sent at the same time. What it is very important is that the deadline is strict. And here you have to identify to which panel you want to send your proposal. You may choose a secondary panel. You can choose a primary panel, so for example, astrophysics, PE9, but then because your proposal, you think your proposal is really interdisciplinary, choose a secondary panel, but then you have to justify it. You have a blank box, and you have to say, why do you think your proposal have to be reviewed by experts from the PE1 panel, for example, for the mathematicians. This is the panel distribution, and as I said before, I recommend to check all the keywords carefully, so to choose the right panel for your proposal. And as Nuria said, it's critical that this, in the first, the ERC evaluation has 2 phases. And within the first phase, only the panel members, which are generalists but maybe not that expert in your field, 3 or 4 people from this panel will read your proposal only in its part B1. So the 5 pages of your extended synopsis and your CV. And then these 3-4 panel members make their reports, and there's a rank, and there's a panel meeting in which everybody can say whatever she may think, and then you decide which is the order. And if you have, for example, like, I don't know, 100 proposal, you choose the 25, let's say, first, to invite them to the second stage. In the case of starting grant and consolidator grant, there will be an interview. In the case of advanced grant, there won't be an interview. They just made the final decision upon the reports from the external referees and the panel members themselves. So after this step 1 of the evaluation, you get your NA, so you are invited to this interview or to this step 2 of the evaluation. You get a B, and then you're out of the evaluation process. Your proposal is considered to be of high quality but not enough to push you in the competition, or you're ranked C. And these B and C have these resubmission restrictions that we've seen before. If you're invited to the interview, then your proposal is sent to remote referees that may, in principle, they should be expert in your field. These remote referees are chosen by the panel members themselves, if I'm not wrong. And at the end of the evaluation process, if you get to step 2, you will get like 7, 8, maybe more, maybe less, but at least 7 is like the minimum evaluation summary reports, so reports from individual experts. So now with the remote referees reports and the reports from the evaluation the panel members that have also reviewed the full proposal, so the B1 and the B2 this time, you go to the interview. You are already in a rank, but then the interview is critical to decide your final position in the rank. And then from these 25 people, let's say 25 people are invited to the interview, 12 will get the grant. 10, 12 will get the grant, and the rest will get either an A, if there's no funding left, or a B if something was wrong during the interview or there's a major problem in your full proposal. And now I would like to give you information on what we are trying to do at the NCP level. Maybe you already know, but this is our web page. It's a web page we have at Oficina Europea together with CEDETI, that it's the other part of the framework program, devoted mainly to the societal challenges and the industrial leadership. And here we put every information we may think it's useful for you. There's an alert service you can sign in, so to get informed of these info days or workshops or novelties on the work program or whatever. We have now put, well, we did this for the first time in 2014. It worked quite well, and we're launching it again this year. It's a pre-proposal screening on those for those candidates competing in the starting grant and consolidator grant call for proposals. It has already been published in the web, and as I said, it's for those PIs asking for a starting grant or consolidator grant, but the proposals have to be sent by the host institution, because we have to be sure that the PI is eligible and that the PI is asking the grant with the Spanish host institution. Which is the aim behind this screening, is to give you not a technical review, because this would be impossible. We cannot replicate the ERC evaluation panels, but to give you comments to improve the final draft of your ERC proposal. So the people who will read your proposal, well, probably it will be one person, but they are expert scientists, senior scientists that have been in many different panels at international and national level. Some of them have been in ERC panels, but not all of them, but they are trained so to know how the ERC works and which are the evaluation questions. Of course, they are under a confidentiality agreement and conflict of interest. They sign an agreement on confidentiality and absence of conflict of interest. And the proposals are sent to us, and we distribute it among the experts. The experts make their reports that, as I said, the reports are mostly devoted to say to you how to put things clear on the written version of the proposal than to say to you how to improve the project itself. But it may be the case that someone has a concrete opinion on an experiment or whatsoever and can give you feedback or also on that. And we have a strict deadline, so to give both the experts and you enough time to review the proposal and to make the final changes on the proposal. And for the starting grant this year, we will receive proposals until the 18th of December, and for consolidator grant, we will receive proposals until the 29th of January. For advanced grant, we don't have this service because for the moment being, we don't think it may be useful, but we can discuss afterwards if you wish. Of course, we organize info days and workshops as today when we were invited. And we already organized mock interview for those of you who get to the interviewing process. But for that, we need to know that you have passed through this stage, because we don't know beforehand. It's just because you inform us that we know, and we can arrange the panel. And from my side, that's all. Only that with the new restrictions on resubmission, it is really hard on the researchers, especially for young researchers. So you may think carefully when you should go for the ERC grant, and of course work hard on your written proposal, and the best of luck. If you have any question, I will be glad to answer. Thank you.
Sí, pero micrófono. Micrófono. ¿Está? Vale. ¿Dónde está la pregunta? Aquí. Vamos un poquito retrasados.
Regarding the eligibility, that you said you need at least a major paper without your PhD director. Let's say you have your first author, also corresponding author. You did all the research once you finished your PhD, but because of policies, you need to include your former PhD director. Can you kind of justify this to make it worth it, or it's just a waste of time?
Okay. Here maybe Nuria can even help better, but I would say my personal opinion, and then she may add something. The thing is, if you've been really the main author, if you're the responsible of the research done in this publication, and you can show clearly to the panel that the line of research you pursue is different from the line of research that is made at your parent laboratory, let's say, then I think the panel can understand. But explain to them. I don't know if this answers your question.
Where would you explain that?
Excuse me?
Where in the submission you should explain this?
I would say in the track record. When you're listing, when you choose the publications, the 5 publications you may highlight, you can say, this publication is important in my career because of this is because of this, in this I discovered that, and usually what they're trying to find is a distinct path career, and if you have this distinct path career that makes you the perfect candidate for your proposal, and this is quite different from your parent group, then it may be fine. I don't know if Nuria has something to add.
Try to make it as clear as possible by showing, for instance, the topic was initiated when you were there, so you really need to provide arguments for the. And also, usually, if this is a practice that comes from a particular lab, people in the field will know that this is what happened in this particular lab. So, go for it.
Hello. I have a question. I understood the B and C proposals are about 50% of all proposals, which are rated B or C.
It may change because, as Nuria said, it's up to the panel to decide where to cut excellence, let's say. Usually.
And what is the proportion of C proposals? Can you?
It's like the last 40, one-third. And so the last one-third of the distribution.
Okay, so it depends on the other proposal. It's not the proposal itself. It's on it's a Gaussian distribution or so, let's say. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Depends on the panel. Some panels go for this year 50% C's in one panel, and others 20. Depends on the year.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. I wanted to know if the revision service that you offer evaluates your resume as well, because from
the abstract, you mean?
No, your curriculum vitae.
Yes.
Okay,
both.
because it is hard sometimes from your internal services in the university to know whether the timing is right for you or not to apply.
Well, for that, the main person who knows is you. So my recommendation would be go for the 2014, well, it's not public yet, but 2013 results, get the starting grants or the consolidator grant or whatever you're competing in your panel and compare.
Okay. And then in regard to this and related to the first question, if you're applying, if you were to apply for the consolidator grant scheme, is it necessary to have a paper where you are main author or corresponding author within the subject that you are proposing, or this is not strictly necessary?
This is a question, this is a very specific question, and it will depend a lot on the project itself, on your past track record, and on the panel. So it's quite difficult to give a definitive
Okay. But
answer.
if I submit a proposal to the revision service, they can also advise me on, say, hey, wait for a year because you're a little bit too immature for this.
But also take into account that this service is like an orientation service, but it is not the ERC. So the ones that will decide are the panel member, and we don't want to say to the people, don't go for the ERC. We just want to help them to go better. So our message will always be, okay, so if you put this here, you know, so this is quite tricky.
The fact is that
we can discuss.
the 2-year penalty perspective, it's quite, it's quite frightening. I understand you want to try to encourage people, but the ERC is not really encouraging people by putting.
I mean, we are not encouraging people like go for it, and we want. But what I mean is that sometimes it's difficult to say to a particular person, okay, you don't have the track record, but what you may expect from the experts we have is that it's something like, okay, this track record supports the project idea, or there are not so much publications in the field for how this PI will cover this part of the methodology, things like that. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks for all this information. I wanted to ask for the starting grant, the publication that you need, the main publication. It cannot be with your supervisor, but can it be with somebody else who was not your supervisor, for example, or that's also penalized?
Yes, I mean.
You don't have to be the only author of the publication.
No. Well, no. What it is important is that these 5 publications are representative of your track record and of your expertise, I think.
You mentioned that it might be an extension due to the maternity. I was wondering about paternity.
Yeah, you're right. I didn't mention it. There is an extension on paternity leave, but it is the actual time that you took for paternity leave. So if it was in Spain with the Spanish laws, it's like 15 days at most. But you can ask for them. And in some cases, it makes the difference between starting and consolidator. So, what? Yes.
For more than 15 days. So
if you took more than 15 days and you have an official letter of your employer saying that you took 3 months, for example, or 2 years, then it's fine. But you have to give the documentation.
Any other question? Okay. Thanks, Esther, for the presentation. And now we will move to the last session. We are a little late, but I think we can recover the time. Okay. Thank you, Esther.
Okay, so let's move on to our third and final speaker, who is Professor Jan Eckhout. He's an ICREA professor and the acting chair in our Department of Economics and Business, and his research credentials are truly impressive. So if you think that obtaining an ERC grant is a big and difficult challenge, well, then he has done that not once but twice. So it is hard to imagine a more appropriate person to come and share his experience with prospective applicants. Thank you so much for taking the time, Jan, and the room is yours.
Okay, thank you very much for the kind words. My objective of this contribution to this discussion is to basically argue that whatever Angel says is basically nothing special, in the sense that there are many things about applying and getting ERC grants that are also random, and so in a sense I'm also lucky in many ways. Now, I should say that I'm probably, of all the speakers here, the least scientific in what I'm going to talk about, because it's just based on my own experience. So it's n=1, so you should see the biasness of whatever I'm going to say. One, I'm an economist. I apply to the economics panel. So this is based on my application to this panel. So I can't tell you exactly how it would be if I had applied to a different panel, because I haven't. It's based on my interaction with ERC through refereeing and other parts of the process to which I've been involved, and also talking to other ERC recipients, people who've been on panels. But the main point is, this is one experience. Just kind of to frame things, my work is on labor markets. I study unemployment and compensation, so that means basically very low and very high wages as well. And the ERC grant, the advanced grant that I had now, was basically on the interrelationship between the riskiness of outcomes and what we call sorting, that is the importance for the productivity of a worker of being accompanied by other productive co-workers. So, if I play in a football team and I'm surrounded by bad players, my performance is likely to be worse than if I play with top players. So the same person performs differently in different environments. I think for science and research, this is kind of obvious. There are very important measurement problems that we have in the labor market, and in particular because there's the confoundedness due to risk. So basically, this is in a nutshell what the proposal and the research is about. Now, just before I get into the two main things I want to talk about, is basically one, getting the grant, and two, having the grant. Let me just say on a personal level what the ERC meant to me. For me, it was also the first ERC. At the time I got the first grant in 2007, I started the grant in 2008. There was no distinction between the two junior categories. There's just one starting grant, it was called, and that was all it was. This was for me very important to come back to Europe. So I was based in the US. I'd been there for 9 years, and without ERC and ICREA from the Catalan government, I would never have come back. I think this is clear to me. It was also clear to the people that I was talking to here. So this was an important kind of part of the decision what to do. And ERC2 that I just started earlier this year was basically also for me an important piece of, you know, being and staying based here. So getting the grant, in terms of if I look around what happened to me and where you apply from, the first thing which is a bit of a myth, I think, is that it's only from the best places, either the best PhDs, so the best institutions, or whether you're based in the best institutions that you have access to getting these grants. I think there's a bit of a myth. We all know that, you know, in terms of people's backgrounds, whether they have a PhD from a top institution or not, their performance is very different. I mean, recently a study for economists came out that the number 3 of MIT does considerably worse than the number 1 of, you know, North Carolina, so to speak. And this is a study just for US universities. And there's so much randomness, and this is also true here. So basically this idea that, you know, you only have a chance if you have a PhD from a top institution, or if you're affiliated currently with a top institution, I think this is pretty much a myth. Now, on my personal application strategy, what I did the first time was basically consider this exactly or nearly exactly like an application for the National Science Foundation in the US, to which I had applied while I was there. And what does that mean? That means basically presenting half-done research. Okay, I mean, in a sense, the question is, I can sit down and think about what I would do in the next 5 years, or I can write up what I am doing at the moment. And in a sense, people ask me very often, you know, this is like a Ponzi scheme in finance, right? You do things based on some expectations of what's going to happen, but ultimately this is peer review. And the point I want to make is that submitting for an ERC grant is exactly the same thing, not exactly the same thing, but very closely related to submitting a paper for publication. The only difference is that it's far less advanced research, but it is research that has some advancement already. I mean, I can sit down and be the armchair scientist and think what I could do, but this is not going to convince the peers, because these peers sit there and say, okay, you've thought about this for maybe a week, but I don't see anything. So my strategy was, as I had done with National Science Foundation grants, is really write up, you know, as far as I had gotten on certain things, that was semi-advanced research. And that meant, you know, for us on the theory side, writing, you know, propositions and proofs. On the empirical side, come up with some first estimations and results. And because I hear a lot of people say, well, you know, I cannot do this because I get the the money for future research. But that's the name of the game to a large extent, and I think that the people who are in charge of ERC are very much aware of. So the first thing that I think is important and that I thought worked out pretty well for me is that, you know, think of things that are tangible in terms of research results rather than things that, you know, might become great ideas. Now, that doesn't mean that, first of all, it's published results, for sure not. Second, it's not even close to publishing result. And that also doesn't mean that you cannot be, you know, ambitious and kind of dreaming in a sense of the type of things that potentially you could do. In general, that also means that if you start to consider this as as part of the publication process, then immediately you get this added benefit because of the fact that, you know, if I see this as a publication process, this is an intermediate step. This is actually very beneficial to apply for a grant because it forces me, one, to think about the big issues at an intermediate stage, which otherwise I wouldn't have done. It forces me to write things up that I hadn't written up yet. And in a sense, you know, it improves your process of getting something that's going to be publishable research. Now, of course, for 5 years, you can't just do this about one paper. So here you have to have a whole pipeline of parallel things that are active and that you describe that you will work on further and finish once you get, or if you get the grant. But once you realize that it's part of this production process of research, it is something that is by itself productive. So just the idea that this is something useful makes it less of a cost to apply. It's now something that's actually quite beneficial. The second thing is, of course, that you do get feedback. You get something like a set of, it's not exactly referee reports, but you do get extracts of the comments that the referees have made. So in a sense, you do get feedback. And then the third thing is that, you know, like publication, there's also rejection. Okay? And I would say that, you know, an ERC like publication is like dating. Rejection is part and parcel of the game. So, you know, you accept it, you know that it's going to come, or it can come. You hope it doesn't, but it can come. And in my ERC application, the last one, I was rejected, so, you know, it didn't feel good. But at the same time, I did get feedback in terms of the reports, and I applied again with an improved, resubmitted proposal. So in a sense, you know, this is nothing else than just the same thing we do in the publication process. I mean, we send it somewhere, we get rejected, we send it somewhere else until this gets accepted. And what is the process itself? The process is of continuous improvement and having feedback from experts. Okay? And I have to say that because the quality of the peer review is actually quite high, because the stakes are high, in a sense, the stakes are higher than publishing, at least money-wise, you get very good feedback because the panels, at least in my experience, the panels were very good and the reports that I got were extremely valuable. So it was useful. Now, given that there's this rejection and riskiness, there is something that hasn't been talked about here, but it's very important also. There's a kind of a byproduct of an application for your field, and that is that I still believe it's true now, but maybe I will be corrected, that the funding for your field is a function of how many people or how much money is demanded. Okay, so if you have a field where very few people bother to apply, that means that the amount of funds available for that field is smaller. So basically it's like buying El Cupón del Once. If you can win, but you also help the blind. And so, you know, what's happening here is that your field benefits just from the fact that you apply. Because unless Nuria corrects me, the funding, global funding, you know, fixed pot, the way it's being assigned in different subfields is in function of how many euros were applied for. And if more people apply, there's more euros, so there's going to be more money in your field that's available. So I think, you know, I see this all as positive effects. Rejection is horrible in dating and in publishing and in ERC, but there's many nice side effects to the application. And I think the main one for me is that it's part of the production process, and this basically helps you improve your research and helps you, you know, in fact, increase your chances of publishing the work later on as you advance. One thing that comes up very often is the CV matters, or does the CV matter? I think there were some questions about it already here, by which I mean, you know, your track record, how much of this matters. And the answer to that is obviously yes, and also no. The no, because I know of a case, there was a nice graph with some Nobel Prize winners, but I know, you know, this is hearsay, but I know of people who are very close to the person of a Nobel Prize winner who didn't get it. So it's not because, you can argue it's a good CV, having a Nobel Prize, I would say yes. But, you know, just the record or your past record doesn't automatically make you, you know, get the ERC for sure. And the argument, I understand, that that was made is that, well, this is a great person, but the proposal is weak. Okay, so hadn't spent enough time on it, wasn't deep, wasn't top research, wasn't excellent research. And if this is the criterion, of course, it doesn't matter whether you do or do not have a Nobel Prize. Now, at the same time, we're also scientists. We know that excellence implies good research and therefore a lot of publications, and excellence implies good proposals. So, you know, we have a common causal origin here. So, of course, there's going to be a correlation between the CV and the success rate. But I do think that my experience with ERC is that there's a very high value on the proposal, and the fact that the proposal is effectively expert research rather than experts per se. So the proposal is very important. I think this was the 0.97 correlation that Nuria showed in terms of citations and the success in ERC. Again, excellence is causal for both. Let me move on to briefly now what happens once you have the ERC grant. In my experience, so I've had them both here at UPF, and I also have had actually, by the way, other European grants like Marie Curie. There's a huge difference. First of all, also in the way you get it. I mean, Marie Curie, in my experience, was like scientific journalism, because you were writing to people who were not peers. So I also got rejected from the Marie Curie, and then you get the type of feedback which basically says, write this as if it's, you know, Time magazine, or write this as if it's The Economist magazine, rather than write it as if it's a publication for a journal. So this is, again, you know, that makes a big difference. Now, in terms of the institution, I have to say that it's important also for this type of grants, and the ERC, I understand, makes a lot of effort for making it as unbureaucratic as possible. There is bureaucracy involved. So far, I've been very lucky. I've only had this experience with UPF that you know, the support of the institution is very important, because there is bureaucracy and there is kind of paperwork, both in the application and in the grant agreement process and in the reporting process. But at the same time, you know, it's useful to have a good environment in terms of picking the type of institution that's going to host you. Makes a huge difference in how painful that necessary part is. I think as scientists in general, I think we're known to be bad and or lazy administrators, and it's something that we, you know, don't like to do and still have to do, and it's part and parcel of it. So the institution is very important. At the same time, one of the things that I have been able to exploit with the ERC is the huge flexibility. So my current ERC runs partly through UPF, and there's a side part that runs to a different institution, University College London. And the advantage of that for me scientifically is clear, the synergies that I have in terms of getting access to hiring people, because someone was complaining about how hard it is to spend money. I don't think it's hard to spend money, it's hard to find good people. So, you know, my main difficulty is I find many ways to spend money, but I can spend it badly. So how can I really get the people that are the best for what I'm trying to do? And the ERC has been very forthcoming in the sense of allowing this type of flexibility. You know, I had this opportunity to collaborate with people there, tap into doc and postdoc positions or people from there that allows me to collaborate with the lab of people that I have here. You know, there's a lot of complications potentially that could be there that were not there, and I think that ERC is amazing in that sense that it allows this kind of flexibility. How does it affect the type of work you do? Well, it definitely affects the type of work you do in a number of ways. One is, of course, that if the number of collaborators increases substantially, it means that you can do not only a lot more things, but also different things. I tend to try out now many more risky things. You know, one thing is the application. It's, I don't know what the call is now, but it used to be, you know, it has to be a risky application. I think once you do it, I've become much more risky in a kind of experimental sense of the type of things that I want to try out, because now you say I can have many more parallel projects running. I have people, let's do something that may look crazy, but the things come out of that. And this is, I think, for me, a huge benefit to be able to do that. If you're very restricted in time and in resources and in people that collaborate with you, you're not able to do that. I mean, it's really too risky in that sense. And one of the big benefits, I think, of ERC is to be able to do that. I think that's about all I wanted to say. Overall, I mean, you can imagine, I think it's wonderful to receive the grant, but at the same time also I think it's nothing special in the sense that there's luck involved. I reapplied, I got rejected, but at the same time I only afterwards figured out that the application process itself is beneficial to my research. Of course, having the grant is beneficial to my research, but I don't see now exposed the kind of cost of applying as I saw it ex ante. Both in the time cost and in the kind of mental cost, if you want. Thank you.
Okay, we're pretty much out of time, but we can squeeze a question or two if anybody wants to grill Jan. Yes, in the back.
How related or unrelated were your two proposals? So
I would say they were.
Would it penalize you to just say, okay, we got with this grant up to here and now we keep on going in the same track, or would you have to actually change complete?
I completely argued that it was a continuation, and it is. So I haven't changed my research. So recovering, basically, I started in 2008. I mean, as I said, since grants are kind of rolling, a lot of the type of proposals were the things that I had been doing the last year of the last grant was part of my proposal. And I would say I have gone for a continuation of the same line of research. There are very different accents within that, but it's continuation. And I never had the impression that this was penalized, not even when I was rejected. The first time for the reapplication for the advanced grant, the type of feedback was never, this is too closely related to your other grant. The type of feedback was that, we don't think this is going to pan out, or we think this is not high quality. There was this kind of arguments, but not in terms of the continuation. I would say, if anything, on the contrary, because I had the impression that, for good or for bad, that the evaluators thought, well, at least we have some track record in terms of what you've done, what output there was with that grant, the publications that came out of that grant. So we have an idea that this may work out further.
If I have to clarify, if you say that what you apply is a continuation of what you have done, even if it's a previous application or your current work, this is the easiest way to get your I don't know what happened in your case. Maybe the panel saw something new that you didn't, but if you just say that it's, I want to continue this that I have been doing, you're there. I mean, you're there immediately on the spot. And I have seen that as panel member, and this is cool. So maybe they saw something that you didn't see, but I mean, this I really want, I'm sorry to jump, but this is, I mean, because what we don't want is to have a club of ERC grantees. Okay, so this is something that we are really concerned that once you get an ERC grant, you just go on. So in your case, it's that maybe you do, then when you said it was not, it was the same, of course, I mean, if you're an economy, it has to be an economy. You're not going to jump into astrophysics, yes? But the question has to be different.
There's no doubt about it, but I thought the question was, do you continue in terms of the same field rather than do you continue in terms of the...
Just for clarification, even if your first submission, if you're a starting grantee, this is where, I mean, you cannot change. I mean, usually, in the starting grantee, that's the only one that, I mean, you just started, so you have not much to change. But on the other schema, I mean, doing a new research question, how do I do that?
Okay, we think it's clear. So having a grant doesn't mean that you're going to have another one automatically. It's coming.
I just have two unrelated questions. The first one is in terms of the choice of the panel. You know, as an economist, obviously you do a little bit of multidisciplinary work, or at least your work can be related to different panels. So how do you determine, and I think it's a question for you and others, how do you choose the right panel, knowing that even within each panel, there are some subspecialties where the requirements of the discipline, the methods you use are going to be really different, and so in the end, you are going to be evaluated with people within your, that are with you in the panel, but that are going to be very different from you, and so, you know, how do you choose? How do you make sure that you have the right one? And second, that's in terms of the feasibility and the methodology of the project. So I read the last call for Horizon 2020, and it says that you really have to have something high risk, has high gain, and propose something really novel or groundbreaking. The question is, you can't be an expert in everything. So will the evaluators try to see whether you as a person, as a leader, would be capable of undertaking every specific step of the project implementation, or whether in the end you are able to surround yourself with postdocs or students who can help you with the expertise that you might not have for every single aspect?
I mean, I personally think, and you don't have to be an economist for that, that division of labor is good. So, I mean, one of the nice things about having collaborators is that you don't have to execute everything yourself. You have to understand it perfectly and you have to be able to design it, but that doesn't mean that you have to execute everything yourself. So I don't know what I have to be careful what I say here, but I personally think that in the scientific production process there is no premium on you being a man of all trades or a woman of all trades, because, you know, I mean, specialization pays and is beneficial, and we are in a highly specialized, you know, sector. So that's to the second part. On your first question about the selection of the panel, for me it was fairly straightforward, but in general I would think of the panel selection as something closely related to journal submission. Which journal do I submit to? And there's a combination of things, you know, what is the topic of the journal, but also who are the people who are the editors, in the ERC case, who are the people on the panel. Because ultimately we can give names, I don't even know what the name is for economics, it's institution, markets, and something like that. We can give names to that, but ultimately the content is the 10 or 15 or how many people there are on the panel. I believe that's much more important, what their views are, what their research is, you know, what their kind of view is on how to do research. That doesn't mean that they have to do something what you are doing, but they have to understand what kind of things that you do. Because if you go to a panel where people have no idea about the intricacies of what your research is about, it's basically impossible to get a decent evaluation. I mean, you know, you add a lot of noise to that. Maybe if you have a bad proposal, the strategy is to submit it to people who have no idea about it. But I think if you have a good proposal, you want to go to that group of people who are as close as possible to your work. I mean, close can be still very distant, but at least people who understand what, you know, the research question is about and how hard it is to get certain results, how hard it is to come up with certain findings. But I compare this very much to the publication process. You know, there's no journal that's perfect for your paper. There's no editor who's perfect for your paper, but there's a judgment there that you make. And if it doesn't work with one, you can also always try another one. I think that's also feasible.
Any final question? Okay, so thanks to, yes. Oh, Elena, yes, go ahead.
I have a question. Okay, thank you very much for the very interesting day, the talk of Nuria and Christina and John. I have a question would follow someone talk about multidisciplinary. And I would like to ask John if he has some recommendation for those of us who work in multidisciplinary. I can tell you something to kind of a joke. If you say, like, I do research in economics or physics, maybe the other person does not know exactly what you do, but they don't make a strange face when, like, you say, I do research in operations research. I will say 90% of the people here does not know even what I'm talking about. So I work in a multidisciplinary area, and I found very difficult in my projects that people understand, because everyone says this is not my area, this is the other area, oh, this is a multidisciplinary area. So I'd like to know if there is any recommendation for those of us who work in a multidisciplinary area and would like to apply to ERC. Thank you.
I mean, this is, you know, my n=1 data point, so I've only seen one panel because I applied to the same panel 3 times, okay, so including the time I was rejected. Now, I can give you my thoughts on interdisciplinary research in general as it, you know, applies to the publication process, and therefore, as I see it, very closely related to the ERC selection process, is that, yes, journals are very specialized, and they are not naturally, you know, except for these top journals that are really broad and wide. Most of the journals are very specialized and are not very, you know, oriented towards multidisciplinary research. You know, we can talk about this as a kind of an issue of the scientific community and the scientific production technology. You know, do we want it that way? Is this good? Should ERC intervene in that? Should, you know, the scientific community intervene? I think the reason why it's like that is because it's so specialized what we do. You know, we are really, really specialized, and it's true that sometimes we work on the same questions from very different angles, and we send it to journals that, you know, would evaluate the same question in very different ways because it's different people with different backgrounds. I personally think that this is something really big that is beyond, you know, me choosing which panel I'm going to be applying to, because there's kind of a global or an aggregate effect there that's more of policy. I also should say that interdisciplinary research was very big when I applied for the Marie Curie grant. And as I said there, you know, maybe for the wrong reasons, but in my experience, it evolved into scientific journalism, because it was not about, you know, what is the contribution scientifically. It's about, you know, tell me why is this interesting to society. And I personally think that if that's what the multidisciplinary research forces us to do, I don't think it's advancing us in the sense of, I mean, there's a lot of demand for making science accessible, but you know, when we do research, it's a different thing. You know, as I said, I have a hard time thinking how we can, you know, make deep, profound, and expert research that is multidisciplinary, also work in a kind of operational level with journals and with panels at the ERC.
Okay, thank you, Jan. Thanks to all the other speakers and to the rest of you for bringing forth what I thought were very good questions. We hope this was useful. We hope this was useful, and now go out there and get us some more grants. So good luck, everybody.